business tough times. It wasn't necessarily the army. It was the decision to start this business. Like that was a really tough time because throughout my life I'd had a number of, entrepreneurial ideas that I never implemented. And when this one came along, I knew that this was the one I had to have a crack at. But at the time I was working an amazing job. So I was the National Director of Strategy and Business Development for a US aerospace engineering firm. Fantastic company. The owners were just super supportive, lovely people. I was very well paid. I worked from home on the Gold Coast and just traveled wherever I needed to. Like my job was amazing, and I loved it. And then when I had this idea, I had that conflict of, I'm very comfortable in my life. This company I'm with is so supportive. They've given me a career path, and all that sort of thing. Yet this idea, I can't let go of the idea. So taking all of that information and then going, all right, I'm going to sell my house, which I'd bought from my war money, my deployment money. I'm going to sell that. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to put everything that I've earned in my 36 years to this idea. And if it fails, I've basically reset my progress back to, when I was with my parents.
Yeah.
Like I would have lost everything.
Yeah.
That was hard. That was hardest, I think, mentally.
Hello and welcome to the Be The Push podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson and I'm going to be sharing with you stories of how business owners and entrepreneurs had to push through the hard times in their careers. We're going to be discussing the lessons learned from these experiences while arming you with actionable advice so you can be the push when you need it most. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to this episode of the podcast. Today's guest is Bench On's CEO and founder, Tim Walmsley. So in this episode, Tim talks us through his story of dropping out of university, working in nightclubs when he was younger, before becoming a member of the armed forces for 14 years. We talk about the discipline Tim learned during his time in the army and his experiences during his 2 deployments to the Middle East. And many of his learnings in the army have been helpful as he builds his startup, Bench On. We talk about how Tim sold his house to bring Bench On to life and the process of giving up an enjoyable, high-paying job to pursue this dream. So Tim put a lot on the line to make Bench On happen. That's why this episode's so interesting. The discussion is full of wisdom. Tim gives us a warts and all rundown of what his first couple of years looked like running his company, Bench On. I hope you enjoy the episode. Here we go. All right, so today we're here with the CEO and founder of Bench On, Tim Walmsley. Tim, how you doing today?
I'm good, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming along. So, firstly, let's just quickly go over what Bench On is. So, this is what you're doing at the moment, and then we'll jump back in time to how it all came about. But Bench On is.
So what we're doing is we're solving employee underutilization. So as you probably know, our industries are becoming much more contract based. And what that means is that, contracts get delayed or they get cancelled or they simply don't line up, which means you have expensive gaps where you've got staff on the bench, in inverted commas. So what we've done is we've built a business-to-business platform that instantly matches company staff who are on the bench and available, and we match them to short-term contracts with other companies who need surge support. So in that way, businesses can now manage the peaks and troughs of the business cycle with paid contracts for their staff in the troughs and then high quality support from other companies in the peaks. Yeah,
cool. So it's going to be pretty obvious when I ask the questions I asked today that I've never worked in corporate before.
Right.
But so when you say people are in these companies not doing, ineffective or inactive, it sounds in a sense. What are they doing during those times? Are we talking they're literally sitting around or like?
Yeah, well, everyone tries to minimize that. Like the things that companies do at the moment are they, force them to take leave during those periods, which no employee likes.
Yeah.
They put them on admin. So we had one of our clients who had a $180,000 engineer as the receptionist for 3 months.
Ouch.
That is the most expensive receptionist on the planet.
Yeah.
And the engineer hated it. Like he wanted to be out doing really good stuff, but they just didn't find the contracts for them. So that they're putting them on leave, they're putting them into admin or doing paperwork or all those menial tasks in between, or the right ones try to put them on training during those periods to beef up their qualifications. But how often does training line up with those exact gaps?
Right. And so this is a huge problem at the moment, is it? Because this is, you're talking to someone who's never worked in corporate. So, but we're seeing a lot of companies, with a lot of people who are not productive, let's say, or not doing the tasks that they're perhaps being paid to do.
Well, no, it's costing the Australian economy $305 billion a year. That's a billion. So that's both employee underutilization and skills underutilization. So it's a huge problem. And I saw it firsthand in industry. I saw businesses shutting down because of the cost directly for this, as well as people losing their jobs because companies go, sorry, I can't afford you during this down period, so we're just going to let you go.
Yeah.
And so great loyal people that want to stay working get pushed out into the cold, and companies lose their corporate knowledge and their employees and everything else just to stay afloat. Yeah. And I just didn't think that was right. So we fixed it.
That sounds shit ass, actually. So this engineer, did you speak to the engineer turned receptionist? Yeah. Did you speak to him or her?
Yeah, they were in my circle. When I found out, I rang him up and I said, "Oh, you're in you've graduated to reception." And he sort of gave me the full story, and he was like, "Look, I took it for the team, but I don't ever want that to happen again."
Yeah. How can someone like that even turn up at work?
Right. Like, how do you get excited? Right, for the next 3 months, I'm just answering phones when I'm the type of guy that can engineer an aircraft engine. Yeah. That's got to be frustrating from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and now you're setting appointments. That doesn't sound too much fun. But before, we'll talk a bit more about Bench On soon, but I want to just press rewind, go right back in time to sort of what you were like when you were growing up. Tell us a little bit about what were you like as a teenager in your school years, and then we'll move on to sort of what your first job was and how your career started.
Sure. As a teenager, I was the black sheep in my family, right? Like I'm a middle child, so maybe I've got middle child syndrome. But I was the one doing all the bad stuff, breaking the rules and trying to follow my own path. I guess in that sense, that's kind of entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing. I didn't really have a plan. I just sort of flew by the seat of my pants. So that was pretty much me as a teenager. I got through school, did really well. Like I did well at school. My parents gave me a private education. Right. They worked, 2 or 3 jobs to do that. So I was very grateful for that. So I did well at school, and ended up finishing up quite strong. But without knowing what I really wanted to do, I started university after school, and I spent probably the first 6 months with all of my time in the uni bar, ditching out on tutorials and everything else until I realized I was just wasting my time, so I left.
Right. What were you doing? What course?
I think it was business communications.
You think it was?
Yeah, well, it's had such a small part, Yeah. Business communications degree is just like a glorified arts degree, It's not even, I don't even know like that. It's just a bit of everything, and you can choose business. And I think I took a drama course while I was in there and at uni, I didn't know how that was going to help me with business, but it seemed fun at the time, so I did. I did it. Yeah. I ended up leaving uni, and I started working in nightclubs on the Gold Coast. All I wanted to do was party and have fun, so that seemed like the best place to work. And so I started as a glassy at Shooters on the Gold Coast. If you've ever been there,
yeah, I have.
And worked my way up to bartender, and then at the ripe old age of 19, I was managing a bar there.
Really?
On the main strip.
Yep.
Which I thought was amazing. I certainly wasn't mature enough to be managing a bar, because I just like to have the keys on my belt and invite all my friends in and show them how important I was, and
walk around, chat.
Yeah. Give girls free drinks. That was it. It was fun while it lasted. But at that point, my career aspiration was to own and run my own pub.
Okay.
And much to my parents' hatred of the idea, they'd spent all this money on my education, and all I was going to do was go and, run a pub.
Right.
So, that sort of stuck for a bit. And then it wasn't until, my girlfriend got me out of that one.
Right.
and put me on the right track.
Okay. So you do well in school. Often we're pressured to sort of, go in and do, you got to do the esteemed degree, do the corporate thing or get the good job. How did you process that? Like, how did you sound like you were having a heap of fun doing the, working in the clubs and that, but did you have any sort of weird feeling around the fact that you'd done so well in school and perhaps you weren't using your ability?
Yeah. Wasn't living up to my potential, and my parents reminded me of that every day.
Right.
But I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't want to go down a path of, learning to be an architect or a doctor or a lawyer or, whatever it was, and put in those 4 years, which, you're on that path.
Absolutely.
And you don't come off it. And I didn't like that idea of being locked in that early. I went backpacking with a mate of mine, just to try and clear our head and work out what we wanted to do. So with $700 in our pocket, we grabbed his van, we ripped out the chairs from the inside and created like a bed with boxes underneath it, and then took off, went down south. So we sort of travelled around, we travelled all the east coast of Australia, right down to Melbourne, and then we ran out of money.
Yeah,
and
it was $700 wouldn't go far, would it?
No, actually, I could tell you a story. We were in Sydney. We just pulled into Sydney. We were on George Street. We parked it in like a paid car park to go down and check our bank accounts, because back then we didn't have iPhones, right? Yeah. So we walked down, checked our bank accounts. I think I had 47 cents in the bank, and my mate had like $1.20, and that didn't even pay to get our car out of the car park, let alone the lunch we were hoping to have. So he had an auntie that lived in Sydney who sent us some money so we could get the car out, which got broken into while it was in the car park, by the way, okay. And had all our CDs stolen. So it wasn't a good day.
Yeah.
So we went out to stay with her, and
but how'd you get out of the car park?
Well, yeah, she over the phone rang them up and paid I think it was $15 back then. Yeah. To get out, and that was super expensive. Now it's like $90, but. So she got us out. We drove to her place. We had enough petrol to get there. And then she, sort of gave us some money to get by, and we stayed with her for about 4 or 5 days. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I thought I'd check in. I'd applied for a credit card before I left, but it never came through. Like when I rang up to check on it before we left, that they said, we can't find the paperwork. So I just went, that was a failed attempt, and we left. So I thought I'd just double check, and I rang up to check my bank account balance, and it said, "Would you like to check the balance of your credit card?" And I went, "Yes, I would." And it went, "You have $3,500 available." And I hung up so excited. I run in and I go, "Berkey, I've got $3,500. We need to get to a Westpac." So we drove into the city and picked up my fresh credit card, and then it was off. We were off. I think we drove to Canberra next after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not worried about, the fact that you're probably going to run out of money again or anything like that?
Well, no, because I think I was 20 then, $3,500. I was like, we're good. We're living. I think we stayed in the Waldorf that night in Canberra.
What's the Waldorf?
It's like I think it's a 4 or 5 star hotel.
Oh, right, yeah.
In the centre of Canberra.
Yeah. And
we're just like, nah, we're rich now. We're not going to be sleeping in a van anymore.
Yeah.
So in the timeline between Canberra and Melbourne, that's when we used up the whole $3,500. We did some fruit picking along the way, but I realised I wasn't really good at fruit picking.
Right.
Yeah. So we ended up using up all the money, and then we drove straight from Melbourne all the way back to the Gold Coast in one day, because all we had was enough money for fuel. So we came home, and then I think all up it was that we were only gone for about 3.5 months. But it was enough of an adventure to break up school and know what we were doing. Yeah.
So what did you come back to the Gold Coast thinking? Where you've got your $3,500 in debt now.
I need to do something, right?
Yeah.
That's when I started to go, look, I'm going to have to get my life in order.
Right.
I came back, nothing had changed. I mean, okay, we're talking 3.5 months, so it's not like, it had been years, but nothing had changed. So I looked at my job and where I was going and my prospects and all that, and it still was the same as it was before I left. And I just thought, I think that's when subconsciously I started to look for something else, and that came from Katie, my girlfriend at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you weren't working in the nightclubs anymore at this stage?
When I came back, I got the offer They were
Right.
like, hey, well, we're not going to put you back into management, because we've filled that position, so you can go back and be a bartender now if you want. And I was like, meh,
Yeah.
do I want to?
Right.
Yeah, no.
Okay. So what next?
So my girlfriend Katie, she who's now my wife, by the way. So we were high school sweethearts. She came to me and said, "I'm not going to, live my life as a bartender. I want to do something." So she applied to join the army, and I thought I was, a James Bond wannabe or something like that. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll have a look at the pamphlets." And the pamphlets for the army make it look amazing. I was like, "Look at all this cool stuff that you're going to be doing." And so to cover it up, I went, "Oh, well, how about I apply with you just to give you some support? We can go through this together, and who knows, we might, be in the army together." So she agreed, and we went through the whole process and did all the interviews and put in all the paperwork and went and got medical checks done. And the final ones were like a recruitment interview and then a psych interview. And it turned out that Katie didn't get through and I did. So, yeah, I can blame the fact that I went into the army solely on her.
Right.
I still to this day, she thinks that she failed the psych exam because she's an animal lover, right?
Okay.
She prefers animals over people.
Right.
And they asked her a question: if you were driving along and you had to hit a pole, a person, or a dog, in what order would you hit them?
Wow.
And she goes, well, I'd hit the pole first, obviously, and then I'd hit the person, and then I'd hit the dog.
Yeah.
And apparently that's the wrong answer.
Right.
And they said, why would you hit the person over the dog? And she said, well, at least I could explain to the person why I had to hit them. But to a dog, he doesn't know. He just got hit by a car.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that's good rationale.
Yeah, like it makes sense.
Yeah.
But she got a very big red cross on that one.
Right. And you got that one right, did you?
Well, I actually don't think I got that question.
Oh, okay.
I got those weird questions like if you're standing on the edge of a cliff, do you ever get the feeling like you want to jump off? And, they ask you all these bizarre questions.
Yeah. Can you remember some of them?
No, not really off the top of my head because
Okay.
that was back in, 2002?
Okay.
I think. Yeah, I can't remember. But it was pretty full on. And
Right.
they do, hammer you on making, trying to delve in and find out if you've got any secrets in your past and have you done bad stuff. And yeah, I think one of the questions is, do you watch porn?
Really?
And I think I heard from someone else, the reason they ask that is to see whether you're embarrassed about it.
Oh, okay.
And because if you are embarrassed and you try and cover it up, then that can be something someone can use against you in the future. Same when they talk about drugs and all those sorts of things, they just hammer you on it until you either tell them the whole story or, they get a sense that you're covering something up.
So they don't really care whether you're doing this stuff or not. They just want you to own it almost.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like,
Okay.
that's right. Like they just want you to own it so that it can't come back against you.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly they don't want you to be doing drugs.
Right.
They've got a zero tolerance for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there in the interview going, I'd like to be an army officer, and they go, do you do drugs? Oh yeah, all the time. I don't think you got much chance.
No, that's fair enough. So you get in and your girlfriend doesn't get in.
Yeah.
What's that conversation look like?
So at the time she was quite upset.
Yeah.
And I think she blamed me a little bit for she almost saw it as they took me over her.
Really?
Which wasn't the case.
Yeah.
We were in an intake of about 150 people. But it was the best thing. She realizes now after seeing what we went through in the army that she never would have enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
She hates bugs for one thing. And I'm like, you're in the army. Like you're sleeping out in the bush.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so she's actually happy she didn't get in. She doesn't do well taking direction either from people, which is sort of a key part of being in the military.
Yeah, yeah. How do you go with that?
Actually, I didn't do too bad.
Right.
I have a problem when I think I have a better way and I don't think they've thought it through.
Yep.
And that's when I normally came unstuck in the military. But
yeah, okay.
No, I'm pretty good. It's actually a really good feeling to know that there's someone driving the ship and you've just got to do your job to the best possible, right?
Yep.
So you know that inside your bubble of managing your troop of soldiers and achieving your mission, Like that's your goal. And you know your boss above you has the bigger picture, and it's just layered over the top. And you know, as long as you do your job, it'll all work out well.
Right.
That's a pretty, it's a lightens your load. There's no anxiety there. It's just, I've just got to get in and get done what I need to get done.
And you make an interesting point about the if you can see a better way of doing something, it kind of irritates you a bit. I can definitely relate to that. And talking about the bars and nightclubs and stuff, when I was young, I did work at a bar. And one thing I can still remember it, and it makes me think, obviously I wasn't a great staff. Well, I mean, I turned up on time and hung around, but I'm not the greatest employee, put it that way. But I remember that they used to sell, this was at a golf club, and, there's a lot of the clientele was quite mature, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah.
And they had this cocktail menu, and, someone would order a cocktail maybe once a night, maybe twice a night. And because no one there knew how to really make them, like it would take one staff member, up to an hour to go and find all the ingredients that were supposed to be. You have to go down to the kitchen and find the strawberries and whatever it was that was supposed to be in it.
Yeah.
And I remember getting so annoyed. I was like, take the cocktail menu off, get rid of this thing. And it just would irritate me every shift, because I don't know why, but sometimes I would get stuck with being the guy who had to make it too.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying it's taken a staff member an hour to make this. I don't know what I'm doing. It's probably no good, by the time it gets to the customer. I remember I used to always end up going, well, you can just have it for free because it's taken me, an hour to get you a drink. That's longer than it took me to get lunch yesterday at the place. It was like a 40-minute wait yesterday, and I thought that was heaps. But imagine
just for a cocktail.
Just for a drink, yeah. But that used to irritate me so much that, you're losing money. You're giving away this thing in the end, really, because none of us knew how to do it. None of us were any good at it. For what?
Yeah. They certainly wouldn't be making their money back on it.
No, they're losing money on the labor, on the ingredients, blah, 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 on the brand, because it would be shit and the customer would think it's terrible. So, yeah, I can definitely relate to the if you can see a better way. And I couldn't handle that in the end. I can't handle not being able to, seeing that better way and then not being able to implement it. So is that something that developed for you? Like, were you always sort of a little bit irritated by that, but it sounds like you could handle if someone, if you had to do it.
Well, I think it was actually the opposite way around. Like, I didn't put any stock in my own opinion.
Right.
At an early age. Like, I always thought other people knew more than me. Like, there must be a reason why they're doing it that way. And maybe I'm just don't understand it, or I'm not experienced enough. And I think that was during my time in the army, where, you are responsible for things, and you actually have to use a voice and you have to do things. That you then started to go, actually, the things I've been thinking about over the years and the times that I've wanted to say something, I should have, because it was the right thing. And now I'm being validated now by, as I speak more and more, people go, oh, actually, yeah, that's a great idea. And you go, oh, so I had to learn to trust my own inner thoughts, and then I have the balls, I guess, to say it out loud and take that. But I think the hard thing to learn is when you give your opinion about a better way of doing something, and your boss turns around and goes, thank you, I've looked into that, we're still going to do it my way. Being able to swallow that and go, yes, boss.
Yeah.
And just do it. That's a skill I think you have to learn. Yeah.
Right.
I think everyone at some point has to learn that, to be gracious and go, okay, you're the boss. That's the way it works. If it fails, then, try again,
right.
Try getting your point across again.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're in the army now. So you decide, obviously you decide to go ahead with it, and your girlfriend doesn't go ahead with it.
Yeah.
What was that like to start doing? To start, I don't know what the first thing you do is. I got no idea what the army's like. But what's your first sort of week to month look like?
Yeah. Well, I had applied to the Royal Military College to become an officer. My grades at school had given me that ability. So I remember it was here in Brisbane City on, I think it might have been just down the road. We went into an office, we all stood there, all these young kids, and then they would hand you a document which you were signing a contract for 4 years Oh, actually, it was 6 for officers, 6 years. And, you know, my parents are sitting on the other side of the room and, you know, all smiling and taking photos, and you sign that, and then they walk you downstairs straight onto a bus, and it's like, wave goodbye to your parents, that's it, you know, you're off. And then the bus drove us from here to the airport. We flew to Canberra, and as we come off the plane in Canberra, there's the two angriest drill sergeant type, you know, warrant officers standing there, you know, the full piece. And because I'd been in bars, right, I was used to just sort of being jovial, and so I walked up to who became the scariest guy I knew. I walked up to him and I went, "G'day, I guess I'm here to talk to you because I've joined the army." And he just looked at me with this look like, "I will crush you with my thoughts."
Right.
And I went, "I'm just going to stand here quietly then," you know. And we did. We all just stood there quietly, not talking, until he went, "Right, on the bus," and they took us into RMC, Royal Military College, RMC, where basic training starts. So you go in there and you get all your equipment, and they fit you out on all that, and they fill out all the paperwork, and there's a lot of preparation when joining the army, admin type onboarding they had to do. And then they drove us out to Majura Range, which is just outside of Canberra, where we spent, I think, the next 3 months out there in a, like, I guess it's like a mini sort of city area there, where you've got shacks where you sleep in, and they break you up into sections of 9 to 10 people, and that's when you start your basic training out there in the bush. So you know, they say the army breaks you down and then builds you back up. Like, I can guarantee that's 100% what happened. And
right.
Yeah.
So how do they break you down?
The discipline at that point is just full on. I remember I almost got charged at one point because I did like a mock salute to a sergeant, and it was bizarre. I was in the breakfast line, and I was going to, you know, I think it was bacon and eggs, right? And I grabbed 2 eggs, and the sergeant was behind me, and he goes, "Oi, staff cadet, only 1 egg." And it was just a habit. I just sort of went, you know, and gave him a wink and a bit of a tip of the cap. Wow, you know, if you want to see an angry sergeant, like, do something like that. So I got dragged out of there. I didn't get breakfast that morning, and I just got, you know, we call it in the army, it's chest poking, right? So they've got a hand that's very straight, and they're just pointing it at your chest as they scream at you, and and you go, okay, this is a whole new world for me.
Right.
So, like, the basic thing is, you know, in the morning they wake you up at, you know, 5:30 with, you know, a big scream, and everyone gets out of bed, and then you've got 15 minutes to make your bed perfect, you know, like in the movies, you know, the proper corners. You could almost bounce a coin off it, right?
Right.
You got to make your bed. You've got to run to the other side of the camp, shave, or shower and shave, but you never had time for shower. You had to shave and then run back, get into uniform, and be standing at attention outside your, you know, section hut.
At 5:45.
Yeah, in 15 minutes. And there's sergeants the whole way along yelling at you because you're not allowed to run to the toilets. You have to march. But you're going, I've got like 3 minutes to shave and to get dressed, and I can't run. And they're like, slow down, you know. And then at the same time, they're going, hurry up, you know. It's a different world. So there was a point, I reckon, at about probably the 5-week mark, that I was on breakdown mode. I was like, get me out of here. I can't do this. I think it was there was a call into my parents, and I was just breaking down. And I actually at one point, you know, called Katie and said, what lie are we going to construct to get me out of here? Like, ring up the army and tell them that you've got cancer and that I have to come and look after you. Like, I was willing to try anything.
Right.
And it wasn't until my brother-in-law, so Katie's brother, he was in the Navy at the time, and so I spoke to him, and he was like, "Mate, you just got to suck it up, you know, just do it." And I did, and I was glad. At the end of that 3 months, I just got a whole new wind. Like, I knew that I was now fit, strong. I knew the basics, you know, I knew weapons, and, you know, knew how to march and knew field craft to a basic level. And I was like, I've actually achieved something now. Like,
right.
And and then the way the army does is they give you, like, there's always a carrot on a stick in front of you, you know, get through this hard bit, and then you'll get these extra privileges, you know, and then you start to enjoy that, and then they're like, get through this bit, and then you get a promotion, and then so there's always something else. And So from going from someone at the 5-week mark in army that was willing to do whatever, and even at that point, I reckon probably break the law to get out of the army.
Wow.
I ended up spending 14 years in the army and sort of retired in 2014 as a major.
Mm-hmm.
So the career just sort of happened. Like there was no point that I was like, oh, when's the 6 years up? I'm out. It just 3 months became 14 years.
Wow. And so you got woken up. I just want to know you got woken up by a scream.
Oh, they had a word. So it was Alamein, from military history, El Alamein. So they would call Alamein because that was what our staff cadet company was called. And they'd say, stand to, Alamein. And the second you heard that, you're out of bed, right? And to this day, if someone screamed that out, my heart would race and I'd be like, out of bed, like what's going on?
Yeah.
So you can imagine Katie's had a lot of fun with that over the years.
Yeah. Right. So you get through 3 months. What does sort of the next few years look like? Are you still doing this? Is it still that strict and disciplined? And
yeah, definitely. So officer training is 18 months at Royal Military College.
Yeah.
And, they break it up into 3 6-month groups. And they call it classes. So you start in 3rd class as a staff cadet, and then 2nd class, you get more privileges. You're at the next sort of level of learning, and then you've got 1st class where they're really hammering home the leadership, how to run 30 troops, or how to lead a platoon of 30 troops, and they try to then work out where your specialty is going to be in army. So you're going to be infantry or artillery or a pilot or and then at the end of RMC, if you're lucky enough to graduate, a lot of them don't. I think we started with 157 in my class, and by the end of it, there was less than 80.
Oh, right.
I think so a lot of people drop out along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of that, that's when you get your commission as a lieutenant, and you actually go into the army to lead proper Australian soldiers, which is it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's an honour once you get to that point, because up until then you've never actually led soldiers. You've just led your classmates, and as they've pretended to be soldiers.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any fun ever? Because I'm hearing this and I'm just imagining this environment where everyone's just angry all the time, and it's this, you sort of it sounds like you'd be walking on eggshells all the time, like don't do this wrong, don't do this wrong, don't do this wrong.
No, because once you know where it is, we call it your left and right of arc, and that's a shooting term. But once you know your boundary and what you should be doing and what the proper process is, then it becomes really fun. Like you are doing something amazing. You're running a platoon attack over complex terrain, and the adrenaline's rushing, and or even just barracks life, and what you're doing. I mean, you've got all of your mates with you. You've gone through hell with them in training. When you get to know your soldiers, they're party family, right? And so there is a lot of fun that you have at that point. But it's a serious business. National defence. It's a serious business. So you are very much ingrained with the work hard, play hard, mentality of, look, let's not stuff around. Let's get this done. And once we've nailed it, and we're faster, we're more accurate, we're better, we're trained in a new area, that's when we can all go down and, hang out and we'll go to the boozer, as we used to say, when you go down and have a few beers after work. And that's where, the fun happens. But it was, I don't regret my time in the army. Like, I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
It was perfect. And it was the perfect thing to switch me from the wrong track that I was going down to, to make me or to build me up to the person I am today.
And what do you mean by the wrong track?
So when I was in bars, you can imagine, living in nightclubs, I became almost like a vampire. I didn't see the daylight. You would work from sort of 9 or 10 at night through to 5 in the morning,
mm-hmm.
and that was your work day.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you'd party early in the morning from say 5 till 9 or 10.
Right.
You try and get some sleep.
Yep.
Get up, go back and do it all over again. So it's a completely different lifestyle, mm-hmm. and in that lifestyle there's everything that goes along with it. Excessive drinking, excessive partying, drugs.
Yep.
You're mingling with the wrong people.
Mm-hmm.
that sort of lifestyle can attract a certain type of person,
Yep.
you know, and I found myself continually moving the line of what I thought was acceptable.
Right.
You know, like my parents brought me up well, and I knew what right and wrong was. And I've always sort of trusted my gut. But the more you're in that environment, and the more you just, in this situation, that's going to be okay. And then that's where you've set the new line. And then the line continually gets pushed to the point where you go, hang on, how did I get myself into this situation?
Yeah.
And it took joining the army to, you know, completely break my mental cycle on that and, you know, switch me back on.
Right. Okay. And how long can people, just out of interest, how long do you reckon people can survive in that environment for? Because it sounds like you were there maybe a couple of years.
Yeah.
How long do people live that lifestyle for?
Oh no, there are people out there like this is legitimately their career, and I don't put that down at all.
Yeah.
I just, for me, I didn't have the self-control to treat it as a career and a profession without all of the fun stuff that went along with it.
Yeah.
I still have people that I know that, you know, were working in those clubs with me back then that are now still in the hospitality industry, still working for, you know, in nightclubs. They're obviously not, most of them aren't still just bartending, but, you know, and they lead good lives and they're happy and healthy and, you know, all power to them. I couldn't. If I'm in that environment, I'm going to do the bad, you know. The self-control wasn't there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to the army now. So you said you were, you know, you trained for a long time. Did you then do any, you know, did you get deployed anywhere or?
Yeah. So in 2006, I was lucky enough to be deployed to Iraq. So that was a 6-month deployment over Christmas from 2006 to 2007.
Why do you say lucky?
Because in the army, you spend years honing your craft. Yeah, and, you know, I'm not... You're not talking about, I've spent years learning to kill people and now I want to go and do it. It's not like that. You know, at the time I was the target acquisition troop commander where we had radars that tracked incoming rockets, and our job was to detect where these rockets were coming from, you know, and then analyze the shards of the bits of the rocket and how it hit the ground and what angle it went in, so that we could develop intelligence about where they were shooting from, and then work out their patterns to hopefully prevent it from happening, right? So we had trained in that, and I trained in the theory, and you can only practice so much out on exercise that once you finally get to go and do it, you know, imagine a doctor that spends 10, 15 years training to do surgery on someone, and then they finally get the opportunity. Yeah. You know, it's what you're there for. Right. You know, so I was lucky enough, and I was lucky enough that I had an amazing group of soldiers that were with me. I had an amazing boss who was very, very supportive, and so yeah, when we got to go there, we had an important job to do, and it was surreal. You know, I liken it back to almost like a video game. There are times where things happen and you see things, and your brain just doesn't register it as real, like that it's happening. But okay, so I'll give you an example. When the first rocket hit the base, it was just after Christmas on 2006. So we'd had all our Christmas celebrations. I think it was the day after Christmas. And I was in the headquarters, and the headquarters was just a wood hut surrounded by big concrete bricks. There's big concrete walls, I guess, to protect you from rockets and things. And when it hit, like the whole thing goes, you know, big explosion. There's sand coming down from the top, and my heart just jumped out my throat. Like, I'm like, this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I was all over the place. And I'm like, I've got to write reports. I've got to, you know, and all I remember is my boss come in, he put his hand on my shoulder. Like I didn't look up at him. He just put his hand on my shoulder and said, just take 2 deep breaths. You know how to do this, and just focus on what you got to get done. And it was like that just calm came over me, and I was like, right, I'm acting with purpose now, but I'm not freaking out like I was. And people react differently to the first time they come under fire. Like, there are some people who can't cope, and they're sort of sitting in the corner going, you know, in the fetal position, and there are...
That's me, yeah.
Yeah. There are others who, you know, just it doesn't faze them. They're like, yep, I've got this, I'm doing it. And then there was, I guess, where I was in the middle, which is, this is surreal. I've been looking forward to this now, but now it's happened. I've got to do something. And it just took a little bit of that hand on my shoulder to go, look, focus, and then I was able to get my job done.
Right. I can remember a specific time when I wasn't in the army obviously, but I was scuba diving once, and a similar thing happened to me where my goggles started filling up with water.
Yeah.
And I'm 6, 7, 8 meters down, whatever it is you are.
Oh,
and
wow.
I start flipping out. I'm gonna die. I'm not gonna be able to see anything. I'm gone. See ya. You know, and I'm just all over the place. And the instructor just looks at me and just put his hands up to his eyes and sort of did that look at me type of thing.
Yeah.
Calm me down.
Yeah.
Didn't die. And I was able to get the water out of the goggles. But that moment where you kind of just go into panic mode.
Yeah.
And then if someone's there just to reassure you, it's going to be cool, mate.
That's
just
right.
chill.
Yeah.
It's needed sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I'm always thankful to that boss for doing that, because to me that was a life lesson at that exact moment. And yeah, that got us through. And look, we had a very, I would say, effective deployment. My team did a great job of analysing from a completely different perspective, analysed everything about the way that these rocket attacks were coming in, and working closely with our US allies over there and restructuring our patrol programs and things. We were able to cut out, or dramatically reduce the number of rockets that were coming in that were killing people. So that we as a troop came out of that feeling like we'd been successful, and we felt bonded together. And as a troop, I think we did up, every troop when they come off deployment, they tend to get like a t-shirt or something made up. We decided that t-shirts were now cliched, so one of my bombardiers, he comes back and he got us all boxer shorts.
Okay.
So we had deployment boxer shorts, with the idea being that no matter where you are at any time, if you ran into another person from that deployment, if you dropped your trousers and you were wearing those boxer shorts, anyone who didn't have them on would have to buy drinks for the night, right? So we wore those boxer shorts a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
All right, so you go and you do how many deployments did you end up doing in the army?
So I did one to Iraq,
yep.
And then I deployed to Afghanistan in 2008, 2009.
Right.
And that was about a 7-8 month deployment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you look back on, your time in the army, a lot of training and discipline and whatnot by the sounds, but also, a couple of deployments. What do you look back on and go, it taught me X, Y, Z? What are the lessons you took out of your time?
The first one was, obviously the key one was leadership and management. How to, lead a team of people to achieve an objective. How to be mission focused. Take stock of the environment around you, any external players you have. What is your goal? What are the options to achieving your goal within the limitations of your resources, and then how to effectively implement that and maintain on plan. Well, that's not right, because no plan, we have a saying in the army, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, because something will always change, and then that plan, you just have to wing it. And But
that's the same with business. It's no business plan survives first contact with the customer, right?
Right, that's exactly it. And that's what I find is that a lot of the stuff that I learned in the military is applicable directly to business. Yeah. You think about it. We know what resources we have in our business. We know where we want to get to. What are our KPIs and our goals? We know that our enemy are our competitors out there, and the environmental factors are the markets, and what are the customers doing, and what are the trends. So how do you develop a plan with what you've got, and then implement it to best effect, being flexible and agile enough to stay on target for your mission, but also maneuver around the obstacles.
Right.
Yeah. So it's actually quite a good metaphor for business, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So on this podcast, we often talk about, the tough times that people go through in their career. And, people would probably listen to this and go, the army is got to be some of the tough times you've been through in your career. But I understand you don't necessarily think that was the toughest time in your career.
No.
What when someone says, if they have, but I'm saying it to you now, when someone says, tell us about the toughest times you've been through in your career, what do you think?
There's a lot of different levels, I guess. I mean, when I was away on deployments in the army, what we experienced over there, what I didn't feel like were my tough times. There were soldiers out there who were, dealing with a lot more than me, and I mean, I never came back with any PTSD or anything like that.
Yep.
But the hard time for me was my wife, Katie, being at home. When I was away in Iraq, we decided that she would try to be as independent as possible, right? So she set up her own life. She became fully independent. She didn't rely on me for anything. And then I come back after 7 or 8 months and just expect to fit back into what my life was. But that wasn't my life anymore. Katie had her life, and I was now invading that life, and that was quite a tough period to work out where I fit back in at home.
Okay.
Even to the point of, if I disciplined the dog, she'd be going, "What are you doing? You're disciplining my dog." It's like, hang on. So those sorts of things were stressful. We fixed that with Afghanistan, and while it was a lot harder for both of us because we made a purposeful sort of pact to remain attached to each other and to be reliant on each other. So while I was away, it was a lot harder. But when I came back, we just slipped straight back into the way we were. And so that was a tough time for us. In terms of business tough times, it wasn't necessarily the army. It was the decision to start this business. Like that was a really tough time because throughout my life I'd had a number of entrepreneurial ideas that I never implemented, and when this one came along, I knew that this was the one I had to have a crack at. But at the time, I was working an amazing job. So I was the National Director of Strategy and Business Development for a US aerospace engineering firm. Fantastic company. The owners were just super supportive, lovely people. I was very well paid. I worked from home on the Gold Coast and just traveled wherever I needed to. Like, my job was amazing, and I loved it. And then when I had this idea, I had that conflict of, I'm very comfortable in my life. This company I'm with is so supportive. They've given me a career path, and all that sort of thing. Yet this idea, I can't let go of the idea. So taking all of that information and then going, all right, I'm going to sell my house, which I'd bought from my war money, my deployment money. I'm going to sell that. I'm going to quit my job, and I'm going to put everything that I've earned in my 36 years to this idea. And if it fails, I've basically reset my progress back to, when I was with my parents.
Yeah.
Like, I would have lost everything.
Yeah.
That was hard. That was hardest, I think, mentally on do I do that? Yeah.
So how did you justify that? I mean, that sounds, you're throwing everything at it basically.
Yeah.
How long did it, when did you first go, I'm thinking about doing this, and to the point where you actually go, I'm doing this? How long did that take? And how did you justify it to yourself?
So the way I justified it was, look, let's just take small steps. I'm not going to jump in wholeheartedly right from the start. I'm going to see how this goes. So I had the idea and I wrote the business plan and I went and took it to a mentor of mine. And he is normally a very critical type of person, yet he was like, this is great. Like, right. I think this will work.
Okay.
And he just, are you patronizing me? Like, tell me. He's like, no, I think so. I think it'll work. So I went, okay. So then I went and took it to a number of people in industry that I really respect and went, what would you think about this? And their responses were like, well, now I'm pissed. And I went, what? And they go, well, I didn't think of it first. And all of the walls or the blockages that I thought would come up, they just didn't.
Right.
And I was doing this, in my spare time. I was still working for the company I was with. Like I said, they were very, very supportive. They gave me enough flexibility to work when I needed to, because they were in the US, so a lot of the stuff that we did with them was in the mornings. So they were supportive of me doing this as sort of a side hustle. So I did that. And then I went to my mentor and said, hey, you love it so much, back me, like give me the money. And he went, all right, I will.
Wow.
So I went, okay, well, let's get, so I systems engineered the whole tech, and wireframed it, and I knew exactly how it was going to look. Then we took it to an IT company and they went, that'll be $1 million to build. And
wow.
Yeah, I didn't know anything then about lean,
Yeah.
lean development principles, and or even the startup culture. I hadn't immersed myself in it.
Yep.
I was just a guy with an idea.
Yeah.
And then so he was like, "Look, I love your idea, but there's no way I'm giving you $1 million."
Yeah.
So I was back to square one. I thought I'm never going to get this done, and I had heard of Sebastian Eckersley-Maslin from Blue Chili.
Right.
He was an ex-Navy officer, a Navy engineer. And I thought, well, if anyone can give me some advice, then it's going to be an ex-military person who now runs a startup accelerator.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a meeting with him over lunch and pitched him my idea, and he went, "All right, we'll accept you into the fold." And I went, "Well, yeah, but how am I going to get it done? I've got no money." And they're like, "Well, that's what we're here for. Like, we're here to help you, raise money, and we're here to help you validate your idea and, crack the market and support you throughout it." And I was like, "What? There's these people out there who are just going to help me, And that was that thing that I needed to learn in order to go, hey, this is actually going to happen. So, yeah, I joined Blue Chili and started the validation process, and again just took it step by step. I was expecting every day that I was going to find out that one thing that meant that I didn't know that was going to just destroy it all.
Really?
You always think, oh, maybe there's a law out there, or there's just a way that they've done this that I've never experienced before, or and it never came.
Right.
So it got to the point where I had my MVP. It was up and running. I was still working my job, because the idea being that this would be automatic all online, and but it took off faster than I thought, and I realized that I either have to do one or the other.
Yep.
Like I'm either doing the business or I'm staying in my job. And so
Okay.
that's when Katie and I had that conversation of,
Right.
are we doing this?
Yeah.
And then explaining to her, well, I'm going to have to sell a house,
Yeah.
because I won't have a job. I can't pay myself for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she was very, very supportive, and I think at that point she'd been with, along the journey with me for that 6 months, where she'd seen how excited I was, and she'd seen that everyone was supportive, even the market and my advisors and mentors. And so she was like, "You're right, you have to do it."
Yeah.
And
So when you explain all that, it doesn't really sound that crazy at all. Like, you've got validation at this stage, and it sounds like my first assumption was when you said you sold your house, I assumed that you sold it to put the money into the business. But did you sell it to just
keep us going?
Yeah, just look after you personally for a couple of years.
Yeah, well, because
Right.
we got 2 young kids. So at the moment they're 7 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, young family. We had a nice house. Like we were exactly where we wanted to be in life at that time.
Yeah.
And I was telling her that I want to undo all of that.
Mm-hmm. Let's throw the Hail Mary.
Yeah, and let's put our kids, education at risk, and let's put our house on the line, and because of an idea I had one night while I was sitting at my desk.
Right.
And so in terms of it being a hard time, it was just a hard decision.
Yeah,
and it
absolutely.
was a hard time that we both were going backwards and forwards, and
Mm-hmm.
it took a couple of months for us to come around to the idea, and then it was like, okay, well, let's lay everything out on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Like, worst case, what's going to happen? And we did that. And then we went, okay, well, how likely do we think worst case is going to be? And, and then we decided to take the plunge. So
Yeah.
I don't think I could have done it without a supportive partner
Right.
there that sort of believed in me enough to
Yeah.
have a crack.
Wow. Okay, so it sounds like you're doing, I think Tim Ferriss speaks about this a lot, like this sort of fear-setting type of exercises where you're like, what's the worst-case scenario? Did someone tell you to do that, or did you guys sort of determine that to be the best approach?
Yeah, no, I think that's Katie's personality very much so.
Right.
She's like, if I think worst case and plan for worst case, then I'm always going to be covered.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, the army also teaches you to do that sort of stuff. Like, you
Okay.
don't just go into anything always hoping for the best.
Yeah.
You've got contingency plans for the worst.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that just came naturally to say,
Right.
all right, well, here's the best thing that could happen,
Mm.
and here's the worst thing that could happen, and where do we think we sit in that?
Yeah.
And what would our plan be if it slips below this point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's sort of. Well, I can remember when I first started thinking like that and doing that worst case scenario type of thinking. it's I don't think I'm overstating it. It's life changing because you can protect against the worst case. If you can protect against the worst case, what do you have to lose?
That's right.
Yeah.
And like I say, in the army planning, when you're looking at what you think the enemy will do, you work out what their best case and worst case is, and then you plan on the worst. And so it all just sort of lined up, and that became sort of the way that we do things.
Right. Okay. And so, what about the journey from that point on until now? What's that look like? Has that been smooth sailing?
No, no, it hasn't. And I can tell you that I was arrogant enough to think that it would be. You hear all the stories, of people going, oh, you're going to have roller coasters, you're going to have ups and downs. There are going to be times where you don't want to get out of bed, you're that anxious. And I was like, they've never met me, mate. It's ridiculous. And so, I went into it with 100% confidence that it was all going to work. It didn't. So, and initially we focused on small to medium businesses because they were the easiest to get into and engage, and they had short decision cycles. Whereas an enterprise, you've got to go through 50,000 layers of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So we started with the small businesses, but we soon realized that the contracts they were putting on to the site that they needed filled were speculative contracts. So they were in support of tenders. The government puts out a requirement and says, we need this done. And then companies have to put proposals together to send in and say, this is how we're going to do it with these people. And small businesses, unlike enterprises, can win these based on their reputation and their size and, the fact that they'll find the people if they have to. Whereas a small business has to show, I've got this specialist and I've got this specialist and they're going to do this and that, and that's how it's all going to complement into a team. And one of the things you can't do is put forward a team and then when you win it, then go, oh, okay, now we're just going to switch them out with these people.
Right,
you can't do that, and no one likes it. So all the small businesses were coming to us saying, great, now we've got a way of finding the talent we need to win this type of stuff. So we were helping them put together their teams on tenders and bringing companies together to collaborate to win this bigger work. But our commercial model was set up as a success-based model. So we were doing all this work, and then through no fault of our own, the customers weren't winning it. Whether it was that they didn't position themselves well, or they didn't write a good tender, or who knows.
Yeah. You were taking on all the risk by the sounds, basically.
Yeah, so we were doing all this work, and I can tell you from, what was it, our first 7 or 8 months, we made $5,000.
Okay.
And that was, we had companies, like when I launched, I had 15 corporate clients, and then that grew to about, 60 or 70 corporate clients during that time. So it wasn't like I didn't have the demand. It was just, it wasn't working. And I thought, I went through a really dark period where I was like, this isn't going to work. No matter what I do, it's not going to work. I think it was, so in that point, Katie was now working on the business because there was so much work to do that she specializes in back end, running the back end of businesses.
Okay.
In accounts and admin and operations and things like that. So I asked her to come and help me because there was too much for me to do. So we were both in it full time now, so there was no money coming into the house, and we weren't earning any revenue, even though we were working our butts off. So I went through a real dark period of, heavy anxiety, self-doubt, doubt in the business, and I can't remember. I can't recall who actually said this to me, but they said, right, are you giving up, or are you going to pull on your big boy pants and have a look at this situation and fix it? And I went, oh, okay, well, big boy pants are on. So we broke it all down and we looked at it and why wasn't it working, and we realized that it was because of this speculative contract issue. We needed more contract in hand work where the client had won it.
Yeah.
They had the job. They just needed the people to help them do it.
Right.
And so we thought, well, how can we do that? Because the enterprises are the ones winning all the contracts.
Yeah.
And so we then targeted enterprises, so I went and met with, big 4 consulting firms, and I went and met with the big end of town and said, look, this is what I'm doing. Just give me a shot. Like, let me trial it. And while some of them take a long time, like we normally say it'll take about 12 months from the time you start talking to an enterprise to the time they're actually operating.
Yeah.
There were some that were willing to give it a shot and went, yeah, okay. You know, and within a couple of months, we had sort of 3 or 4 enterprises on there.
Yeah.
And then they started trading and they put their contracts on, and all of a sudden, it was in May. So yeah, May 17. All of a sudden, everything just flipped.
Right.
We were still doing the same level of work, but all of a sudden, it was coming into contracts, and we were starting to get revenue, and
Right.
you know, our clients were winning
Yeah.
work, and then it all just, that was the clicking point.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a real dark 6-month period there for a while until that happened.
I can imagine. So during that time, the 6 months that you know, you're putting in a lot of effort, it's not quite, you know, turning out the way you want it to. I'm just interested if you feel like you look back on that, were you sort of on the hamster wheel a lot there, doing stuff, and you weren't taking the time to stop and really reflect on what was working and what wasn't? Or is that a poor assumption to make?
No, I think that's an accurate assumption, because at the time then it was only me in the business and Katie part-time pretty much, because she was looking after the kids, part-time doing the back-end stuff just to keep it ticking over. So everything was on me, and because I was new to the startup scene, you know, I was going to meetups all the time and, you know, networking events, and I was going to any speaking event I could get. I was out doing. So I've made myself too busy, you know. So during the day, I was actually trying to do the operations of the business.
Yep.
At the same time, trying to do business development to bring on new clients.
Yep.
And then also trying to build my profile externally, with no one really to lean on to run the business while I was gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was just a complete lack of time, you know.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about your concept to the customers and your, you know, and to potential clients, and they're all going, oh, this is fantastic. You know, you're getting all this positive feedback from the market, yet you know internally something's broken because it's not earning money.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was a confused. I think that's why it took me so long to get to that point.
Right.
You know, you're getting the positive feedback, so you're like, well, everything is telling me this should be working. Why isn't it? And there was that period where I just decided to crawl into my shell, and rather than actually take the time to focus and go, something's broken, let's fix it. Let's analyze this. And yeah.
So was it just a case of one day you sat down, or 2 days or a week or whatever it was, and did analyze what was going on?
Yeah, that was it. I said to Katie, right, this is it. It was one night. We ended up staying up for most of the night and just sort of broke everything down, looked at every single contract that we'd matched and every single company that we'd helped. Why didn't that win? Like, why didn't they win? Is it something that we did? Did we match them to the wrong quality? Well, no, because, you know, they selected that person and they got them on the bid and they were complimentary, and then it was like, it was just that epiphany of, hang on a sec, you know, everything here is about tender support, and we're not here to do tender support.
Right.
We're here to do matching the talent for when and where it's needed.
Yeah.
And
so that's the light bulb moment. That was stop doing tender support.
That was the pivot.
Yeah.
I don't even say pivot. Like, we didn't change the way we did. Like, we didn't change the product. We didn't change our messaging. We changed our focus on business development.
Yeah.
But that was that missing link.
Yeah.
And since we cracked that, it's just been hard to keep up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's fascinating. I've recently got a coach myself. Not even a coach, just someone I talk to every 2 to 3 weeks. I go and see him, and that time for me is forced reflection, and it's just the power that has to stop and actually look at what's going on. I think it's going to save me months, because you know, I was the type of person that could go, you know, I didn't really want to analyze what was. I wanted to know, sort of, but I didn't really want to stop and analyze it, because I don't know, I might find something I don't want to find, or you know. But yeah, that's I don't think you can understate the power of that. Is that forced reflection, and okay, what actually is going on here? I'm going to look at it, I'm going to face it, and I'm going to make some changes as a result of that.
And that was the other thing to learn, which was don't be afraid to look at how badly you're doing. You know, like, actually embrace that.
Yeah.
And that's true when you bring on employees. Employees tend to go, I want to show the business how well I'm doing and how much I'm growing and everything else. And when the conversations I'm asking them are about the times that it didn't work, or they start to think, oh, they're attacking me. They're trying to tell me I'm not doing my job properly, and it's like, no, like I think you're doing your job great. But if we can focus on these areas and work out why that's happening that way, then you'll be even better. So and you've got to do that with your own business. While it looks all shiny on the surface, be able to turn around and go, okay, well, I've got to find the part that's not optimal, and the part that's not working, even if it's not staring me in the face. Go searching for it, because that's the gold that'll make everything run smooth.
Right. And so you've got employees now?
We just hired 2 employees this month, or one last month, one this month, and we're now searching for another 2.
Right.
So it looks like in the next 3 months we'll have grown from 2 staff up to about sort of 7 to 9.
Cool.
So it's fast growth. Now Katie is struggling because she's now our COO and co-founder. Because we realised that she was the glue holding all this together while I was out doing CEO stuff. And I went, why aren't, because I said, I'm going to need an operations manager. And she's like, I'm going to have to teach him all this. And she went through and she was trying to tell me everything she'd have to teach everyone else. And I went, why do I need a COO? Like you're doing this. Customers love you. You know this better than anyone else. You're more efficient than anyone else. All right, you're COO. And then, there's a lot of talk about, are you a single founder or have you got a co-founder? And a lot of investors want to see you have a co-founder and things like that. And it wasn't that we didn't make Katie a co-founder for any reason other than I went, why aren't you? You were here the second I walked out of my office. And I was jumping around like a crazy monkey going, I've got this idea. It's awesome. And, she was there from that. She was my sounding board for that. She worked through it all with me. She ended up coming in to help. And then she became the core of the business. And I was like, well, I'm not going to take, credit for this because it wouldn't have happened without her. So now she's co-founder. So we complement each other very, very well. I'm more of the outgoing, forward-facing, ideas person, and she is the one who can take a crazy idea and make it executable, and put all of the attention to detail into it to make it actually work behind the scenes. So, very, very complimentary team. So
awesome. Okay, and so now you're trying to build this culture where, by the sounds, that it's very open, and it's about just being honest. No one needs to protect their desk. Just be honest. Like we'll talk about what's going well, what's not going well. How have you gone about building that? Because I've seen a lot of situations, and it's probably more common in, it's pretty common I think in a lot of businesses where people will not engage with what's not going well or what they're not doing well. Fear of getting fired and all that type of thing. But it is so. When you're in those situations where everyone's just saying, I'm not doing this that well, or I've got to work on this, and everyone's being open about their strengths and their weaknesses, it's pretty incredible. Like, and I think the things you can do then are, you can do so much more then because everyone's just calling it how it is. How have you gone about engineering that type of a culture?
So we set that very early on in our values. So one of the values in our platform and how we interact with our clients is we are 100% transparent and honest. We're going to tell you exactly what we think, and if it's good or bad, and because we don't think in business there's any room for trying to cover things up or just to make someone feel better about themselves. It's either going to work or it's not. So we were very transparent, we're very honest. So when we were searching for our employees, that's the sort of things that we're looking for. We're looking for someone who's humble in the fact that they can be confident in saying, we did this rather than I. I don't want anyone who's in this for their own glory. I want someone who gets my vision, because this is I believe has a massive social and economic impact. That's what we're striving for. We're not striving so that you can win Employee of the Month. We're here to achieve a much bigger goal, and so that the people that we've hired are the people who get it, who got as excited about the idea that as we were talking as I was. And we also love an underdog, right? So we haven't gone out looking for that person who's done it 1,000 times and is held up on a pedestal. And, we've gone to those people that we've seen potential in that. So Alison, our Director of Strategy and Business Development, I knew her when I was in the army, and I knew her when I was out in industry, and I saw that she was just one of those people that was amazingly talented, but 100% overlooked by the organisation she was working for.
Okay.
To the point where she was doing most of the work and just getting zero recognition, and I thought, she's amazing. So I was trying to get my company at the time to hire her, but we just couldn't. We couldn't make it work with the contracts and things. And so I just kept in contact with her. And then when this job opened up, it was just like, I thought that she was very happy in where she was working. And I put out saying, I'm looking for a business development manager. And she called me. What the F, man? Like. Yeah. We've been trying to work together for 4 years. Like, why didn't you call me? And I thought, I thought you would, you were happy where you were. And she's like, I want in. And so I immediately, I turned to Katie at the desk and I just went, take down the ad off Seek and everything. She's in. Like, cause I knew that she was in, and I knew that not only was she talented, but she was also ambitious, and she wanted to prove herself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way we've hired not only our tech team, but also everyone else. And I guess that's the way Katie and I have always operated. You know? And our business, we're not one of the big guys, we're a startup.
Mm-hmm.
We are automatically the underdog.
Yeah.
So we need people who are going to have enough hustle and ambition to say, I'm going to prove to you why we're not, and why we should be at the top. Yeah. And so,
and you can almost win on trust with that approach, I think, as well, because, the amount of times I've been in a meeting with someone and by the end of it, I'm like, I'm not your guy. Like, I'm not, there's got to be, I reckon this person over here can help you more than I can.
Right.
And just the way that kind of, you say that and then someone looks at you kind of a bit funny for a while and then they appreciate it. But my thinking is, if there's no need, if I'm not needed, I'm not needed. We'll find out in 3 months anyway or something. So let's, say it now that, I'm not your guy actually. And so that culture, that culture is incredible to think of. But all right, so we'll have to wrap this up in a minute. I've chewed your ear off for the last little while. So Bench On. So what's some of the some people might be listening to this and going, well, what could they use Bench On for? What's some of the people they know? How could they use Bench On? Who's it? So you're talking about enterprise clients at the moment. Who's this perfect for right now?
So we've got about we've got just over 300 corporate clients at the moment. Out of those, we've got around 20 enterprises. Without mentioning names yet, because I haven't been approved to talk about it publicly, but they're on it. So one of the big four banks, one of the big four consulting firms, global defense engineering companies, global logistics companies, accounting firms, legal firms. We're across, defense, IT, mining, oil and gas, construction, education, business consulting, all the finance and accounting, so we are horizontal across all industries. And the reason for that is that the way that industries have been operating over the last decade has forced it into this contract-based scenario where even a bank, has a large contingent workforce they need to support their projects. So they need contingent workers. And in one hand, they scream out going, there's talent shortages in our industries. We're not getting the right people. And on the other side, the side that I'm on, I'm talking to these business owners who are like, if I can't get this guy on a contract or this guy or girl on a contract, I'm going to have to let them go, and that's going to, hurt my business. So I'm like, well, the talent's there. You just need to find it. And so my advice then is that, this will suit any company that a managing director has ever been there with their head in their hands on a Friday night going, how am I going to pay wages this month? And it's for any enterprise that goes, I just want a better, faster, efficient way to find contingent workers that aren't necessarily job seekers or freelancers.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's what we don't do that. It's purely business to business.
Right.
So we have everything from global enterprises to micro companies. you know, and we have a lot of people that approach us and say, look, I want to start my own business, you know, can you help? Okay, well, if you get your logo and your brand and all that set up, then come on board and we'll help you grow your business sustainably.
Right, so they can take on a couple of projects and bring on just a couple of contingent workers, see how it works out for their...
Yeah,
right.
or they go, okay, well, I'll get you your first contract and then I'll just keep throwing you opportunities. So you start to collect together resumes of people that you want to hire. And anytime I throw a contract at you that's that, then hire that person. And now, hey, you've got a business, you know, and then I'll just keep throwing them at you and you can just grow as the opportunities come up. Yeah. And we reduce the risk in the downtime so that you don't have to then let them go after that contract. Yeah. But the market continually uses us in different ways that I never expected. So one of them is professional development. You know, enterprises have always said to me, oh, we don't care about underutilization. You know, we're that big, we got that much money. I mean, we just put them onto put them onto some other department to get something done. And I was like, okay. And then one enterprise who was just so innovative and forward thinking, the person I was talking to, he was at the C-suite level, and he just went, I want to use this for professional development for my team. I don't want employees sitting there getting stale at their desk and demotivated because they're doing the same old thing. Okay, instead I'll put you out into industry for a month. You'll learn how a different style of business operates. You'll get a different change of pace. You know, you'll learn new things, you'll develop new networks, and then you can come back and I might put you into a more senior position, or I might just put you into a new team or a new project, or, you know, so that professional development side was something I hadn't envisaged when I first designed Bench On. Yeah. But now that's part of it. So you got some businesses that use us just for passive business development, others that use us to prevent underutilization, others that use it for professional development, you know. And the reason is because, you know, there's a lot out there when they talk about, well, if the customers are using you in ways that you never thought, then maybe, you know, you're not focused enough. And it's not that. It's the fact that every business out there in industry has a different model, a different way of operating, a different leader who thinks differently about the use of his resources or her resources. So we've been flexible and agile enough to be able to accommodate that without changing our process. Right.
Yeah. Brilliant. No, it sounds awesome. Like, and it's one of those things you probably almost reflect on it a bit like Uber. It's sort of like, well, yeah, that's a perfect idea. And then what you're doing sounds similar. It's like, yeah, well, why wouldn't we want to utilize what's not being used? But someone had to do it.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, this is circular economics is the flavor of the startup movement. You know, like there should be no waste. We can repurpose waste into the value for somebody else. They're all the big startups that do it. You know, you got Airbnb and Uber and all that. All they're doing is repurposing wasted or underutilized assets. Yep. So we've now just done that in the white collar professional talent space.
Yeah. And I think the original definition of an entrepreneur was someone who moves resources from an area of low economic yield to high economic yield. So you're one of the pure breeds. Yeah. So all right. So where can people find you and find Bench On if they want to, you know, learn more or learn a bit more about you? What's some places they should go?
Sure. So our website is benchon.com.au. In there, you'll be able to see all of the information about the process and how it works. You'll be able to see our 1,000 job pledge campaign that we're running right now to create 1,000 new jobs in industry. Right. Or they can just call 13,000 bench, which is our number. The 1,300 number was taken. Right. So 13,000 bench. And yeah, we're happy to chat through anyone and see what their situation is and how we can help.
Right. And I'll put the link to your LinkedIn profile and whatnot in the show notes as well, so they can find you there too. But Tim, thanks so much for being with us today. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Be The Push podcast. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. I appreciate your company and look forward to talking to you again soon.